You're listening to Systemic Era Podcast. The failure was designed.
Modern backlash against Justice Barrett reaching new level of vitriol. Conservative, based on an article by Alex Henderson. The real threat was the executive order, not the backlash. Trump made the move. The source's useful fact is simple. Donald Trump tried to end birthright citizenship by executive order, and the Supreme Court, in a narrow 5-4 ruling, stopped him. That is the story. Everything else is commentary layered around the central abuse of power, a president attempting to strip a constitutional guarantee by decree. Who held power? Actual institutional power sat with Trump and the machinery that carried his order into court. He was the actor who made the decision. The justices did not create the crisis, they responded to it. The oracle's attention drifts toward Amy Coney Barrett, MAGA and elite anxiety over judicial security. But that is secondary to the underlying fact that Trump again tested whether executive will could outrun the Constitution. The framing does the work. The source spends a lot of time on Barrett's perceived betrayal, on David French's alarm, and on the danger of MAGA fury. That is not irrelevant, but it is misweighted. The real political question is not whether the far right is mad that one of its own occasionally votes against it. The real question is why a president can still force the nation into a constitutional fire drill over something this fundamental. The focus on Barrett also performs a familiar dodge. It recasts authoritarian ambition as a story about judicial temperament. That softens responsibility. It turns a deliberate assault on birthright citizenship into a personality drama about a justice who has her own ideas. The problem is not that Barrett occasionally resists Trump. The problem is that Trump attempted to erase a constitutional rule in the first place. The court barely holds. The ruling itself matters because it shows how thin the institutional barrier has become. 5 justices, including John Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett, upheld birthright citizenship without reservations. The 3 Democratic appointees joined them. That is not a sign of healthy constitutional consensus. It is a sign that one more round of MAGA capture, one more vacancy, one more compliant nomination, and the guardrail could fail. French's concern that this could become a Roe-style litmus test is not paranoia. It is a clear statement of how the right works. If it cannot win through law, it tries to remake the bench until the law says yes. That is not judicial philosophy. That is institutional colonization. The cruelty is the point. The article briefly notes the threats against Barrett, the swatting, and the attacks on her multiracial family, including her adopted children from Haiti. That deserves plain language. This is authoritarian intimidation. It targets not just a justice, but the idea that anyone can break from Trump and remain safe. But even that cruelty should not become the main subject. MAGA violence matters because it enforces discipline inside a movement built around obedience. The aim is not argument. It is fear. Barrett's partial independence irritates that system because the system depends on loyalty, not law. What this story actually shows. The larger pattern is familiar and ugly. A Republican president launches a direct constitutional attack. The judiciary narrowly stops it. Conservative elites then spend enormous energy discussing the comfort of the justices rather than the original offense. That is how institutional erosion advances. The danger is constantly relocated away from the office that initiated it and onto the people trying to contain it. Birthright citizenship survives this round, but the political lesson is not reassuring. A democracy should not need heroic judicial arithmetic to preserve a basic constitutional rule from a president's signature. The fact that it did is the story. You've been listening to Systemic Error. Thanks to Alternate for today's article. With the automated voice of Rizat, thanks for listening.